Welcome to the Handyman Pros Radio Show. Home improvement and maintenance tips from the pros. This episode, hey, did you know you can lift concrete? Thanks for listening to another edition of the Handyman Pros Radio Show, where our goal is to help you save time, money, and aggravation. This edition's entitled, Hey, did you know you can lift concrete? To help me explain, I'm here with my ever-cheerful co-host and old buddy, John. John, what's been going on this week?
Hey, Larry, how you doing?
I'm doing great.
Well, perfect. You all in one piece?
I think
back?
So. I'm back. Yeah, I took a little vacation to other parts of the world.
Man, always on the vacation. It must be nice.
It is.
Hey, you know, while we were gone, I was working on a house, and I got to tell you, so I pull up to the house, and I'll get out of the truck, and I'm getting all my stuff, and I'm walking into the house. If I wasn't watching where I was walking, I tripped on the sidewalk, because you know how sidewalks are built. They're kind of like one slab and then another slab, and and they kind of break, and the one was lower than the other slab. Was
this at our favorite friend's house that has the rental properties?
Yes. And so I'm carrying all my tools and stuff, and I was like, man. So I hit that thing with my foot. And I recovered, obviously, but just going in, but back and forth, getting things throughout the day. You're always, kind of being real cognizant of this trip hazard.
Yeah, pain in
with
the neck,
concrete.
right?
Yeah.
Plus, as a rental owner, that's a potential liability, right?
Well, no, that's absolutely right. And somebody can really get hurt. And even as a homeowner, somebody comes to your front door, right?
Yep.
So, anyways, that's kind of,
it leads into our story this week.
Yes, it does.
Isn't that amazing how we do that? We wind these things in. Anyway, so, John, you and I were at a home show in Atlanta here several weeks ago, and we met a couple of guys named Travis and Matt, and they're from a company called LiftItRiteLLC.com. Their website is www.liftitRiteLLC.com. And what do these guys do? They actually lift concrete. And you and I knew that we could do this, but we don't know how many of our listeners do this, that they can do it. So we decided you and I decided, I guess, that we needed to have, that they've got a great story, and we needed to have them on, and here it is. Well, Travis and Matt, welcome to our show.
Thank you. Appreciate you having us.
Yeah. So we met you guys at the Atlanta Home Show. John and I, we both know about lifting concrete, but we realized that really a lot of people don't know what lifting concrete is, or how to do it, or what the advantages are. So can you tell us a bit about your business?
Sure. So basically, lifting concrete is we use a polyurethane foam to actually inject through the concrete and lift it up, as opposed to a total tear out, where people think you come in, jackhammer it up, take Bobcat, and take out the concrete and pour new concrete. Say some concrete that's dropped down near your house, or a sidewalk or driveway, or a whole slab of your home. So what we do is we come in and we just drill a small hole, 3/8-inch hole, into the concrete and inject this polyurethane foam. It expands, and as it expands, it's going to take about 28 seconds to expand 24 times its size, and it's going to push with about 14,000 pounds per square foot of pressure. As that does that, it basically void fills anything that's underneath there. You have voids underneath your driveway on either side or something like that. It's going to void fill it first, then it's going to compact it, and then it's going to lift it. It's a very non-invasive process. We're in and out within a couple of hours, and you're ready to use your driveway within a couple of hours. At 15 minutes, it's 90% cured. In 4 hours, it's 100% cured. So you can drive a tank on it within 4 hours. We still haven't found anybody that has a tank. We're waiting for that customer.
Yeah, well, wait till you come to my house. I was gonna say.
Wow, that's impressive. That's impressive. A lot nicer than having to reinstall or rebuild a whole driveway.
Yeah, it's a lot better. So you're not having a lot of downtime for the customer. So a lot of this is driveway stuff. So people are having to, if you replaced it, you'd have 7 days where you'd have to park your car somewhere else or on the street or something like that. Whereas with us, we come in a day, and then that night you can drive your car right back in. So it's a very non-invasive process. for customers.
So other applications, so sidewalks, any place that a concrete slab has dropped, is that what you're saying? I mean, is it foundation work? Tell me more.
Yeah, so any slab, we can lift any slab, whether it's a sidewalk where one section of that sidewalk has dropped, and so you've got an inch drop between one section and the next, a trip hazard. Anything over 3/8 of an inch is considered a legal trip hazard. So municipalities, they have to keep up with that, which they don't very well. But we're working on that. So any slab, sidewalk, driveway, a garage floor. If you have a garage that has a bow in it where it sinks down in the middle, it shouldn't be like that. There should be your garage should be pretty flat. There's somewhat of a shed from the back of the garage to the front of the garage, but it shouldn't bow in the center. So that can be lifted. Pool decks on the outside edge of the pool decks drop down and then lift up at the coping side of that pool. That all can be lifted up instead of tearing it out, instead of doing all kinds of coming in the backyard and ripping all that out. So basically, any slab can be lifted with this polyurethane foam.
So here at the Handyman Pros Radio Show, we're all about root cause. So what actually causes this in the first place? I think I know the answer, but I want to hear it from you guys.
I would say the number one thing that we see is water mediation. Downspouts not directed far enough away from the structure. Drainage lines that have broken sewer lines. Anything that's omitting that moisture has a chance for water erosion to take place, which in turn starts settling things very, very quickly.
Another thing that we see is compaction. So when that stuff was built, they bring in fill dirt. So, normal construction of a home, if you have a basement or something like that, they basically dig out a big hole, right? And then they pour walls around, let's say the concrete side or the high side of that house. If you have a daylight basement, the other side is the framing. But they basically dig that out, and then they put the walls in there. Well, there's a pretty good gap between where they dug that out and where that wall starts, say 4, 5, 6 feet. Then they come in and they just backfill that in. Well, they don't compact it correctly, or they bring a bunch of fill dirt in to bring in the landscaping up to the patio or up to the side of the house where that stone is going to start. And over time, it sinks down because they didn't compact it correctly. They put a bobcat in there or something, or a couple guys with some shovels and some rakes and put down some sod, they're good to go. But over time, that soil is going to compact down, water coming down on it, or is it naturally settling? So you have a slab that says, hey, I'm sitting on top of this, and all of a sudden it cracks and drops down with that soil. So compaction and then water are two of our biggest things that we see.
Wow, I see it all the time. After we met you guys, and it just now I'm looking for it all the time. Now that we're it's so top of mind, and also I know from my experience at the house when they used to bury some construction debris.
Yeah, I was going to say
leave construction debris underneath, and then they fill over the top of it. Well, it rots away, the wood or a tree or something, and that now you've got a big settle.
Yeah, you've got the big sinkhole in your backyard, which is the same thing that happens, and that's where actually was what I thought most of it would be, but I forgot about erosion. But I was thinking most of it would be from a lack of compaction and from, we'll call it, less than great construction techniques on the front side. Where they don't compact. So
that's exactly right. We run into a lot of sinkholes as well, and sometimes they're from the construction debris. And I believe there was something done about that in about 95, 96, 97. People were still doing it a little bit later than that. But so we see this a lot as well underneath someone's driveway, and you can actually tell. You go out and you can see the ground dropping in a semicircular pattern off the side of the driveway, and then the driveway as well. And we remediate that a little bit differently than with just lifting. So if you think about that, there's basically they dig a pit and they throw 2x4s and shingles and Budweiser cans down in there. Come on, back in the 90s, that's what all the framers were drinking, right?
Right.
They just throw that all in there. and then they cover it up with dirt. And then they're like, hey, let's pour the driveway over top of that. Well, that stuff starts to biodegrade, and it may be 5-6 feet underground. Well, there's a little cavern underneath there, just like Luray Caverns or any other cavern around, right? And over time, let's say you get a bunch of rain. Like these last couple of years, we've had a lot of rain, and we've had sinkholes, people calling us about sinkholes that from houses that are 30 years old they didn't realize they had. So that ground is fine, it's sitting there, but you get a bunch of rain, it gets super soft, and then all of a sudden starts dropping 5-6 feet down below the soil, then bringing that topsoil down with it, the top of that area, bottom of that driveway with it. And all of a sudden you start having a driveway collapsing and sinking in, which we see a lot of that. So first thing we need to do is remediate the issue down below where those gaps and voids are deep down in the soil. And basically it's a deep injection method. We basically put rods down into the ground. We drive them down into the ground anywhere from 5 to 10 feet, wherever we get to a solid substrate. And then we inject the foam down in there, and that foam is going to void fill, and then it's going to compact that soil. And it's going to set up pretty quick, and it's going to basically remediate the issue down below that caused the upper area to drop down. Then we inject straight through the slab with a short port that's just going through the concrete right to that soil that's on the top and inject the foam. Now that foam has something to lift off of. I use this example a lot to explain this. If you have a strong man that's lifting a barbell over top of his head and he's standing on a nice solid concrete pad, right? He can pick that up and put it over top of his head with no problem. But if you take that same strong man and you put him on a trampoline and ask him to do the same maneuver, he's not going to be able to do it because he's not standing on a solid surface, a solid substrate. So that's how the foam works. The foam has to remediate the issue first before it'll start lifting. So once we actually start lifting that concrete, we know that we have remediated that issue. So that's why we can warranty what we do, because we've taken care of whatever issue is going on down below that, whether it's erosion or decomposition of something or a non-compaction issue.
So it brings up another question. Environmentally friendly? Are the products that you're using environmentally friendly?
Yeah, they're NSF approved, which means they're actually good for contact with potable water. Our manufacturer, which is located in Tucker, Georgia, is one of the only companies that does make sure that all their products are NSF approved. So we everything that we use from them has been through the ringer of certifications and processes to ensure that what we're using is not harmful to the environment.
It's also safe for use in federal fish and wildlife areas. So if we can use it there, we can use it in your front yard. Once that product expands in that 28 seconds, it is inert. It doesn't off-gas. It doesn't go into the aquifer or anything like that. So it's a safe product. Once it sets up, it's done. I mean, it's good to go. It's not going to do anything to the environment.
And I guess the natural question next is how long does that last?
Well, it is a polyurethane plastic, which put a milk jug underground for a couple of years. What it looks like. Same kind of scenario. It'll be there 50 to 100 years. Obviously, the technology of using it for concrete lifting hasn't been around that long, so it's hard to say. A definite 72 years and 5 months is how long it's going to be down there. But again, the products, the only thing that really deteriorates them is the sun's UV rays. Sun's UV rays are detrimental to plastics and hence breaks them down. So when we're putting it in the ground under concrete, things like that, we don't see a lot of that issue. So typically remediating the issue, you're going to see an issue within the first 5 years. If you don't see it in that, you're probably not going to have an issue.
You're good to go.
So basically, you're saying it lasts about as long as a hot dog, then, in a landfill. That's what you're saying.
You're right.
So kind of walk me through then. I mean, if I walked out one time, and my sidewalk was falling down. I mean, what's kind of steps do what kind of things do I take? Do I, when I call you up, you come out? I mean, can you kind of walk me through how you would interact with the customer and to get the job done.
Okay, so first thing you do is you can go online. You can look us up on our website. Our website is liftitRite.llc.com, and Rite is spelled like Rite Aid, Rite. So you can go to our website. We have a submission form on there. If you're at your office and you can't talk, you can go on there and fill out our submission form, and that will get sent right to us, and then we can call you back. You can schedule a time when it's convenient for us to call you back, or you can call our office directly at 470-294-0313. Once you contact us, we'll take some information from you. We're going to ask you exactly what you got going on, and we're going to get an address from you, and then we'll set up an appointment that's convenient for you. Then we'll come out and take a look at it and get you a quote right there on site for the most part, and we'll send it right to you from a tablet. We take pictures of what exactly is going on. We put that on the quote so there's no mistake on exactly what we're doing. If you have a sidewalk that's down, and take a picture of that sidewalk, and I'm going to put little arrows on that picture, and I'm going to say, okay, we're going to lift this up. We email it to you, and you have it right there, and then basically we get on schedule. If you want to move forward, we move forward with getting it on schedule, put you on our calendar, and then we'll come out there on that date and get it taken care of for you.
So from the actual job, like you, when you come out, you drill the hole, you inject it, and you're actually then measuring, just so everybody knows that you're gonna be able to bring up the lower portion that's sunken almost exactly to where it used to be, right? You guys are that good.
Yeah, well, I mean that's always the plan. There are things that can happen, but for the most part, yeah. I mean, the plan is to bring it back up to original location, stabilize it, and then ensure that obviously it's not going to be an ongoing issue for the homeowner.
So So compare the investment that they're going to make to lift their slab versus pouring a new concrete slab. What's the difference? Is it like a percentage, or do you have an actual dollar figure or something like that?
Well, it definitely depends on whether the customer is doing a stamped concrete or the different products in concrete obviously cost differently. We've seen our product be anywhere from I'd say probably a tenth of the cost of what they've gotten to replace and rip out to 50% of the cost of what they've got to rip out and replace. It just all depends on what product they're actually using, who's doing it for them. But it can be substantial, absolutely.
I would say usually a third to a half of cost, and maybe even less than that. I mean, that's kind of dependent on how much it is, but yeah, I mean, it's substantially less than tearing out and replacing.
So very viable for, we'll call them later model houses where the concrete hasn't degraded, is what it sounds like.
That's correct.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, tell us about a recent job. Just tell us about any particular job, or tell us a story about a big job you've done.
So we did. We had this one commercial building. It basically was warehouses and offices in one giant building. We'll say 300 foot long, and it was built about 12 years ago. Well, a little bit after they got done completing it, they noticed that the back part of that building started sinking a little bit. Well, over time, what had happened, it was a cinder block building. So cinder block on party walls in between each one of the office and warehouses, and cinder blocks all the way around the outside. So basically, about 100 foot along the back in the center of that building, the slab had cracked about 8 to 10 feet in, and the back edge or the back wall where that slab was sank down about 7 to 8 inches, creating basically stair step where those cinder blocks had separated. You could hand a Coke can from the inside to the outside through the wall assembly. Well, what we found was that there was a sewer pipe that was leaking. And for 12 years. Yeah, for 12 years. Creating super soft soil that was not able to support the weight of those cinder block walls on that slab. So basically we had to do deep injection all the way along the back of that building, putting rods down and injecting foam and stabilizing, basically compacting that soil from down in there. And then once we got that soil stabilized, we actually lifted that slab up. The only other option that guy had was basically demolishing that section of the building. And that would mean tearing off the roof of the tearing out the whole back wall, basically almost demolishing most of that building. So we got that back up.
Wow.
That was a definitely interesting project for sure.
Wow, because I'm glad that you mentioned what would happen if he wasn't able to do what you guys can do, because I was going to say that sounds like a teardown. Now, how long did a big job like that take you? And did you I don't know what your background is in terms of engineering things. Did you have to have engineers out there to do all this and, to watch you do it, or to make the calls and some of that?
No, we didn't need engineers. So we did bring our manufacturer in, and they did a GPR, a ground pulse radar scan of the soil below to see exactly what we were up against. And that's kind of why we came up with, we need to use 20-foot rods, and how that soil was. So we brought in our manufacturer. They worked really close with us, and told us exactly what was going on in the soil conditions below there. They actually formulated special foam for us. They make it reacted a little bit slower. So we can do some things. These are some technical things I won't go into. But so basically, the manufacturer came in and kind of helped us with that process to make sure that we were bringing it up right. And so there wasn't a whole lot of issues, unknowns that we were looking at. So it was great working with them and making it a successful lift.
Now we do want to assume you fixed the septic issue, I would hope.
Yeah, they did. The foam as we were injecting, and they didn't know that it was actually leaking. But as we were injecting foam, it actually had got into that leaking pipe, and
started backing up the sewers to every unit. That's how we found out. Okay, there's a pipe problem. He called his plumber. His plumber got out there to actually clear the pipe, was getting a lot of foam out of it. That's how we found the foam actually found that crack in the pipe, sealed it up, but also got into the pipe.
Wow, this product is pretty amazing. It's flexible, all kinds of uses for it.
So just back up on that a second. So that actually sealed up the pipe, the broken pipe that was underground?
Yes. It did.
Wow.
Because the foam is a 3-pound closed cell foam, and I know a lot of people have seen the stuff called Great Stuff foam. That's actually an open cell foam, and that's what we call a 1/2-pound foam. So that has cells in it, so you can take your finger and you can push into it. And also, if you have that stuff outside, like where a pipe, your HVAC line comes out of your house, a lot of people put that around there because there's big gaps. So that will actually get water into it because it has a bunch of cells that to go in there and allow the water to permeate through it. Now, the foam that we use is called a 3-pound foam. Now, the difference in what we're saying poundage is, if you have a square block, a cubic foot of that block of that material, that's how much it would weigh. Open cell is 1/2 pound. So if you had a block of that, it'd only be a 1/2-pound foam. The foam that we use, if you had a block of that, would be a 3-pound foam. The great thing about the closed cell foam is it doesn't allow water to go through it. You could take that block, you throw it in Lake Lanier, it'll float around for 20 years, and it's not going to get any water into it. So it's not going to allow water to permeate through that material. It's basically going to keep it from.
So that's actually a bit of a takeaway for us then, is that don't use an open cell foam around anything on the exterior of your home, because it's actually going to absorb water and hold it, causing a potential rot situation, versus a closed cell foam that will be impermeable to water.
True. Yeah. True. Yep.
But now for weatherization type of stuff, I mean, don't get me wrong, great stuff is good in the right applications. When you're sealing up things on the outside of a home, if it's not going to be exposed to the weather, that's best case scenario.
Right.
If you're leaving it exposed to the weather, then that's not the right product to use.
Mm-hmm.
Well, all right. John, do you have any other questions?
I don't. I really found this fascinating, and I think a lot of people are going to find it fascinating as well. Just from the aspect of, a lot of folks are going to walk outside, right now listening to this and say, hey, I've got an issue, and I can get it fixed without having my whole driveway or patio or whatever repoured.
So
call you guys and get this done.
So I do have one question. This just dawned on me. This is not exactly a DIY project, is it?
No. This is something that takes very expensive equipment, and you have to know how the product is made. I mean, Matt and I have been in the industry, the polyurethane industry, for a combined total of over 30 years. We were on the installation side for a long time, so we know. I would say 75% of this business is actually knowing the chemistry and the equipment that installs this stuff. You can't just go buy concrete lifting foam at Home Depot. It's not going to be next to the caulk. So it's definitely something that you need a trained professional to come out there and look at it.
Yeah, I mean, we just have to qualify that because we do have a lot of our listeners like to do DIY stuff, and this is something that's not a DIY, but it is one of those situations where hiring the professional actually has a value statement. Basically, it's like, you're going to save quite a bit of money, to do this versus pouring a new concrete slab. And again, and I had mentioned it earlier, particularly if your slabs are really in, relatively decent shape. I mean, this isn't something for a 40 or 50-year-old concrete slab, I'm assuming. Is that correct?
Well, you know what? It's the crazy thing is we have done some really old concrete that that they mixed it right, and it was strong, and we lifted it up. I mean, we've done houses in Atlanta that had really, really old concrete, and that stuff is hard. It was mixed right back then. Everything. They made it right.
I was going to say that's a whole nother show we're actually going to do one of these days, is have a concrete guy come in and explain how concrete works and what's involved with concrete, because I've had some skirtings with that industry, and I mean when you realize there's 4,000 different types of concrete mixes, it's an engineered product in and of itself, and so people don't really realize that. They think, oh, it's just concrete, it's the same stuff you buy at Home Depot. It's like, no, it just doesn't work that way. So
you're exactly right. But one of the things I did want to say is we don't just lift concrete, we also do void filling, and that's one of the things that we have a lot of customers that call us up and say, hey, can you do this with that foam, is on the side of your driveway where it meets the garage, there's big voids. A lot of people have voids underneath there. Or underneath a front patio or something, there's a huge void. Well, we can go in and inject the foam underneath there and stabilize that void fill before it drops. So if someone has a problem where it hasn't dropped yet, we can come in and save it so it doesn't drop. Because a lot of times it'll crack and cause other issues. So
it'd be more expensive to repair.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's better to be preemptive and say, hey, I got a void on either side of my driveway that I swear to God an armadillo lives underneath there.
And they might.
Yeah.
Yeah. We chased them out. We chased out armadillos, snakes. We chased out a 6-foot black snake a while back, and that was actually pretty funny. But she was great. But when that snake came out, because she kept asking us about snakes underneath that part of the driveway, when that snake came out, and it did, she took off and ran 2 houses down and hid behind a tree. I don't know why, but it was awesome. So if you have snake holes or whatever underneath driveways and stuff like that, we can remediate that before it actually drops down and be preemptive. And it's a lot cheaper than saying, hey, my driveway's dropped down 6 inches and I got all these cracks in it. Can y'all do something? Which we can do with that as well. But it's better to go ahead and take it care of before it gets to that situation.
Yeah, and I was just going to say that's something that John and I see that on occasion, and we now, of course, it'll be on our radar to actually be telling people that it's like, hey, you need to, because you're exactly right. Water washes it away or animals get in there or whatever. but somehow there's a void under your driveway, your patio, whatever. This is a product that will actually fix that before it becomes a bigger problem. We at the Handyman Pros Radio Show are all about preemptive maintenance, about keeping things, save yourself the money because you can do it now. It's pay me now or pay me later, right? You can pay me now a lot less, or you can pay me a lot more later, right?
Exactly.
One way or another, you're going to pay me.
Yeah, right. That's exactly right.
That's right. But it's funny you bring up that exact situation where the driveway meets, the foundation of the house. I've seen it over and over again. So I'll be recommending you folks because I see that all the time.
All right. So once again, how can people get a hold of you guys?
You can look us on our website at liftitritellc.com, and Rite is Rite like Rite Aid, RITE. Or you can give us a call at our office, 470-294-0313.
All right. Well, perfect. Well, Travis and Matt, we want to thank you. Travis and Matt from Lift It Rite LLC, and we appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
Thanks much, guys.
I want to thank Travis and Matt for being on the show. Boy, did I learn a lot. John, what are some of the key takeaways from our conversation?
I really enjoyed that conversation, by the way. I really want to thank those guys once again. But, some of the takeaways, and I know that I think we talked about it early on in the show, was that, we know that this kind of technology existed, but I know a lot of people, they don't really know that this exists, that you can actually, fix these kind of issues where your concrete is sunken without having to rip it all out and replace it. Now, I just had, my neighbor just had some things and just ripped out all the concrete and things, but I think that a big chunk of that could have been taken care of doing this.
Yeah, it could have been done just by pumping the foam up underneath it. I think one of my takeaways on this was how cost effective it is versus that replacement. I mean, I know they're kind of part and parcel of the same thing, but you got the one thing is that people don't even know you can fix it. Then the second thing is that it's actually cost effective as well.
And just usable the same day. That's what I was kind of amazed at. I didn't know that. Within 15 minutes, I think, I don't know what the stat was, but it's like 90% was there, and within probably an hour or so, you're ready to go.
Yeah, and it's a permanent fix, and it's kind of like check, it's done. And he said something about concrete that it's like you're going to wait at least 7 days for it to cure. And
sure.
I know from just being around the concrete industry that fully cured concrete takes 28 days. So I mean, your concrete's strong enough to drive on in 7, but it's not fully cured for 7 days. This stuff, I think he said like 4 hours tops, it was like 4 hours. So these guys are in and out and done. And I mean, that's, in our world, that's really important.
It's a great story. It's a great story. And I hope a lot of people check this out.
Well, we hope you've enjoyed this edition of the Handyman Pros Radio Show. We do want to remind you, join our Facebook page and be a part of the conversations. If you have questions, ask them out there on Facebook. So, John, anything else? Well,
Larry, the spaceship has landed.
Do we look at it or do we take it apart? Ladies and gentlemen, if you've enjoyed this podcast and have derived some value from it, here's 4 things you can do. 1, tell your friends about this podcast. 2, hit subscribe on your podcast player. While you're there, leave us a review. 3, subscribe to our newsletter by going to handymanprosradioshow.com and click on the subscribe button. We'll inform you of upcoming events, shows, and give you actionable tips for maintaining your home and property. And 4, send us an email with your questions to questions@handymanprosradioshow.com. That's handymanprosradioshow.com. That's our show for this week. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week on the Handyman Pros Radio Show.